Howdy! On this video I'm going to be solving the second question from homework number 5. And the first thing that I recommend to do is to read the question. So you need to create a Python program that traverses, or in other words, goes through a vector or a list. In other words, that goes through a list of numbers reading the position of the element and the value in the element. The user should provide the number of elements and the value of the elements. Your output should look like this. And then there's a hint. Pay attention to the append. So to the append function. Um, and then here's an example of how it should look like. But your code should work for any number, not only for 5 elements. So then your homework is 2 files in total with headers attachment separately in your submission. Okay, so both of the files need to have a header. So let me do that. This scripts um, of the element and the value in the element. Okay. Now that is a little long for the size. Okay, something like this. And then I can start solving it. Now let me make sure that if I need a function or not. No, it doesn't say that you need to have a function. So you can do everything in your main, or you can create a function. But after reading the question and looking at the example, I know that the first thing that I want to do is to create a variable that is going to store the list I'm going to be using. So in my main, I'm going to have list equals to an empty list. Then I know that I'm going to ask the user for the number of elements in the list. So n equals to in input and the message to the user. Please enter the number of elements in the list. And then that is what I need as a stopping point. That's what I'm going to use for my for loop as a stopping point, which is the end. So the size of the list. So I'm going to have for I in range of n. And then inside, I'm going to be appending elements of the list. So I'm going to say that x equals to int, then input, please enter the next. Oh, I was going to put a different message, but we're going to do exactly as the example. Input each element in this list, but then also input the number of elements you want in the list. So I'm going to modify my previous message. Input the number of elements you want in the list. Okay, just to make it look more similar to the one in the example. So I'm going to be asking for one element at a time, right? Per iteration. Then I'm going to do list, append, and we're going to append X. Now before I continue, I'm going to just print my list just to make sure that it works. There is an error. Oops. This is important, but that is why you need to run your code and then you can debug it. So now I'm going to run my code again. I can see that I have grammar error in the message, which I'm going to fix in a bit. So let's say there is 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, and here is the list. The list look like this. So now let me fix this. The number of elements there. Okay. So now I don't need this. We're going to have a loop, and I'm going to use a for loop. You can also do a while loop, but I think I'm going to use a for loop for this. So at this point, I already had a list populated with the elements from the user. Now I need to read it. I need to transverse to the list that we created. So I'm going to have for I in range of n. We are going to print the position of the element is, and the value stored in the element is. So I just following the example. We know that the first variable is the position of the element, and in that is going to be my I. And then later I need the element that is located in that position in the list. So list of I. And I'm going to run the code. So it is 5 elements long, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops. Most recent call, line 16. Milliliter for in. Oh. Oh, by accident I pressed the plus key here. So going to run again the code. Input the number of elements that you want to delete, 5. Then I'm going to do it slowly this time. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after we created the list, it outputs this message. The position of the element is 0, and the value stored in the element is 1. And again, the position of the element is 1, and the value stored in the element is 2. So now this looks exactly like example. Again, there is different ways of doing it. But this is one. And I'm going to demonstrate another way of doing it without using a pen, which is also takes just one line. So I'm going to comment out the one where I am using a pen, which is line 17. And then now I'm going to do list is equals to list plus X. So what I'm doing right here is that I'm adding to list. X by itself is just the integer that we have from the user. But if you put it inside the brackets, then this that I'm highlighting is a list. And because list is a list, this variable is also a list. If you add them, you concatenate them. So whatever you have here is whatever you have here, you add that to this one, and then I'm storing it on this variable, which is list. So I'm going to run the code again. I'm going to do exactly the same. 5, and as you can see, it's exactly the same. The code is still working as the instruction says, and there's literally no difference in the output. The only difference is inside here in my loop. And as I mentioned, right? So first I use a pen, but there's different ways of doing it. So here is the other one. And there's probably there's for sure more other ways of doing it. By instinct, if you ask me, I will use this one, uh, because of my experiences. Um, but the instructions is just giving you the hint to use a pen, so that is the reason that I use a pen first. But I wanted to share with you all that there's different ways of doing it, and sometimes it's as easy as just exactly one line more. And that's it for this video.